Hello and welcome along to the second Luton Premier League preview of the season with me, Daniel. We'll be looking ahead to game week 3 of the Premier League season with a huge focus on previewing Chelsea v Luton. We'll also have a look back at the Brighton game from the opening day which I was at and have a quick recap of our predictions from last weekend, which of course didn't involve Luton Town. As always, you can play along in the comments with the quickfire Premier League predictions at the end. A massive thank you to everyone who supported the first one this season. It certainly did make a big impression on the channel and we really do appreciate it. If you're looking forward to this one, then please do put a thumbs up on the video. Let me know if you're going to be at Stamford Bridge and also get your comments in with your predictions for this weekend across the Premier League. What we're going to do first though is have a look ahead to Chelsea Luton, and we've got a preview by looking back to what happened to Luton on the opening day, because there were very differing reports about this. So for people who didn't attend the game, or for people who aren't Luton fans, it can be very hard to gain a picture of what actually occurred. And obviously what Brighton did the following weekend against Wolves has made it look a little different now too. Of course, Luton went to Brighton on the opening day and lost by 4-1. 2 late goals from Brighton, with a ruthless streak putting it out of sight. But we've got to talk about a couple of the tactical elements here and what we can take out of it as Luton fans, because it's something I've looked a little silly for saying since, but for those of you who were at the game, you'll probably understand what I mean. I'm actually more confident that we'll compete this season and have a chance at survival. Not saying we're going to do it, but a chance at it, than I was before the game, because a 4-1 defeat looks heavy, but we were going away to a side that finished in the top 6 last year, and a side that have now won both of their opening games by 4-1. And if you look at the type of goals they scored against Wolves, there were some similarities in there against another side who we expect to be in the bottom half this year. But let's have a look at the positives for Luton first, because for 80 odd minutes, this game was very competitive. A soft penalty gave Brighton a second goal, albeit you're not going to get those overturned in the Premier League. And the third goal, of course, was an individual error by a club legend. But these things happen, and we've got to learn to adapt. Luton traditionally not the quickest starters. We all sat there on the first day of last season when we got bored to death by Birmingham, lost at home to a wonder goal against Preston, and so on and so forth. We were all there the August before when we lost 5-0 at home to Birmingham, before making the playoffs just after a 7-0 defeat at Fulham. Luton have these days, and they bounce back from them, so that's not going to be a huge problem. The big thing for me is that we were competitive. And if you look at the attacking side of the game, we did create openings. Now, of course, the shot counter reflects that Brighton were the dominant side. And by the way, let me just clear this up. Brighton were the better team. They deserve to win. I'm not saying that at all, which seems to have been misconstrued in a couple of the other comments. Brighton deserved to win. And probably if you'd gone before stoppage time, 3-1 would have been an accurate score for me. Most of the stats are about 3-1 anyway. But one of the things that came out of the Sky Sports report, rather than the Alan Shearer report, was that Luton actually created a lot of openings and got into dangerous areas. One of the things that we have got a problem with this season, though, or certainly in the early weeks, is that both wing-backs have been replaced, which is something that is a huge part of our game, and obviously with 2 big strikers in the box is going to be a main threat for us this year. And we saw 3 or 4 occasions during the match where Carlton Morris or Elijah Adebayo, whoever's in the box, makes a run to the front or back post and the cross goes the opposite. So you get a floated cross and Morris is running across the front post or vice versa. And that's the sort of thing that's going to take a few weeks to get settled in. And of course, it's something on bigger Premier League pitches is going to be an issue, not so much at Kenilworth Road. What we did find, though, was that Luton were getting in behind a team with a pretty decent defensive record last year, and having 2 big strikers gave us an outball. There was a bit of talk about us not having much possession, which I don't know where you were when we were in the Championship. We never had much possession under Rob Edwards or Nathan Jones before that. We looked more of a threat than I expected us to, and we did get in behind more often. The negative on that side, though, is that the same happened to us on more occasions. Now, I'm not actually that worried against Brighton, because if you look back at the Championship last year and the types of teams we struggled against, Sunderland's a great example where we held on to a point at home but got carved open for the last half an hour. When you look at the away leg in the playoff against Sunderland, and even part of the game up there as well in the league, what you notice from it is that we really struggle against teams who are quick on the counter-attack, and it often depends on which of our back 3 is fit. I think it would be fair to say from the weekend against Brighton that we missed both having Osho or Reece Burke on the right side of that defence. Lockyer and Anderson, both good defenders, but probably the least mobile of our 6 options there. And of course, it does look like there's another one coming in this week. May happen before the Chelsea game. However, that is a big problem for us at the moment, is that there is a little bit of threat in behind. We haven't got the paciest back three, particularly in that right channel. The positives though, the wing backs look good. Chong and Pelly, very competitive in the middle. If you take out that late error from Pelly, thought they were very competitive in there and physically were able to compete. And that is one of the things that will be a benefit for Luton this season. It's having that physical competitiveness, having that threat from set pieces. It's just about taking chances and being ruthless, which is what we saw from Brighton at the end. Now, there was a little bit of criticism from Alan Shearer, I'm sure most Luton fans are aware of it, about the fact that Luton were naive and went toe-to-toe with Brighton, which I think most people who were there for the first 80 minutes will be wondering what he was on about, because I certainly was. There were very large spells in the game where we sat back in our own half, we encouraged them to have possession in front of us and then tried to hit on the counter. It wasn't a toe-for-toe gun-ho approach until late on in the game. Now, I've seen Rob Edwards take a little bit of criticism for the fact that he went 4-2-4 just as it went to 3-1 after the Pelly mistake and tried to chase the game. I actually don't have a problem with it, and this is my view on it. Yes, the latter is possible, but it is far more likely that Luton are going to be saved this season by gaining an extra point than saving 10 extra goals on the goal difference, even 20 extra goals on the goal difference. What is the problem with losing 4-1 instead of 2-1 if you know you've got the team who are going to bounce back and you know the reason you're doing it? If Rob Edwards makes that change to 4-2-4 at 2-1 down this season, say 10 times, if it works once and we get a point or 3 points out of it, and the other 9 times we're letting 20 extra goals, I'd argue it's worth its weight in gold just to get that extra point or 3. And I'd encourage us to keep doing that if we're in the same position in future games, which, let's be honest, we're going to be behind a few times this season. We'll probably need to do it. We have got to be better from set pieces. We have got to be better defensively. But we have got people coming into the team and coming up to fitness still. We saw a number of debutants in the team, and almost everyone in the squad made a Premier League debut at the weekend. It's not a side that's experienced at this level, and going away to a rampant Brighton team, who probably one of the form Premier League teams since De Zerbi joined, certainly one of the best to watch, was not an easy start. However, this week, we're going away to a side who traditionally were a top 6 club and have shown glimpses under Pochettino, but ultimately finished in the bottom half last year and have 1 point from 2 games. Away at West Ham, there were encouraging signs for Luton, which were West Ham do a very similar thing. They win the ball, they counter at speed, they take advantage of an aerial threat being a very physical side and set pieces and experience, which Luton probably going to have to try and do against Chelsea. We know that given Chelsea's home form in recent months and what happened towards the back end of last season, it's not going to take a huge amount to take confidence out of the side. And I just wonder what would happen if Luton can get the first goal. Ultimately, it's going to be a ridiculous challenge. I mean, every Chelsea signing this summer has virtually cost more than Luton's entire transfer history, to give us a little bit of perspective. I know the stats been going around about if we put our record midfield out, we could have 7 million quid's worth of talent on the pitch to Chelsea's 340 odd. But let's not get bogged down in that for now. Chelsea are a side in poor form and without confidence, but with a very good manager who will probably get it right eventually. What Luton have got to do is try and take advantage and play the way they do. There needs to be a few less gaps defensively, and it may require us to sit behind the ball a bit more. Pochettino's side's normally good on the ball, but Chelsea don't build up quite as quickly on the counter as Brighton. On the Luton side of things, of course, since we recorded the last one, Jacob Brown came in and made an impact off the bench against Brighton, playing a key part in winning the penalty. And Ross Barkley joined the club, which was probably the surprise signing of the summer. I don't think even a Luton fan saw it coming. And he may make his first outing probably from the bench this Friday night after building up his fitness for a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like the other defender will be there in time. But now with Tim Krul challenging Kaminsky, who looked very solid on his debut too, there is a bit of depth in that Luton squad, and it's starting to take shape as what we expect to see it come the end of the transfer window. Ultimately though, despite all the positives and frailties, as Chelsea are finding out in the opening 2 games of the season, it's about points. Now, Chelsea look better at home against Liverpool than they probably did away at West Ham, certainly defensively to the counter-attack. But there is definitely the opportunity to open them up at times, and it's whether Luton can be ruthless with those chances. Maybe the benefit being that they've had 2 weeks on the training ground, whereas Chelsea have obviously had another game. That's going to come back to bite us later in the year. For me though, if I'm being completely honest, you have to make Chelsea favourites. I have seen so many comments from Chelsea fans who obviously haven't watched non-Premier League football for a long time, We're saying it's got to be 4-0. We've got to take out our anger on them. I'm not sure it's going to be that easy. Of course, I could be proven wrong. We're talking about a £1 billion squad here, essentially. But I think this is going to be a quite close game. I do feel Chelsea will edge it because when there's that much quality on the pitch, surely they're going to get opportunities. And if we're sitting deep, are they going to have pop shots from 25, 30 yards? Maybe one of them goes in. You don't know. I'm going to go for Chelsea to nick this game by 2-1. I don't think it's going to be the runaway Chelsea victory that many are predicting. And I don't think Luton were anywhere near as naive until they went 3-1 down, as Alan Shearer said at the weekend. There are positives on the attack. I don't feel we're defensively strong enough at the minute. Let's go and have a look, though, with that done, at our predictions for the rest of the Premier League this weekend. Very quickly before that, let's have a recap of what I predicted for matchday 2, which Luton weren't involved in last weekend. And actually, I played a bit of a blinder. 8 correct outcomes out of 9, only the Spurs United game called wrong. Bit disappointed with myself for that one, especially given United's away record last year. But 1 perfect score for Liverpool Bournemouth, albeit due to a dodgy penalty. And the other games, all correct outcomes with the exception of Spurs United. That means for the first time in a long time, in any of our league predictions, I did beat everyone in the comment section. So you have to play along again this week and see if you can beat my score. If you do, you'll get a shout out in this recap next week, where hopefully I'll be wrong on the Chelsea-Luton game. On that note though, let's have a look at what I've predicted for the rest of matchday 3. Of course, the Friday night game on TV is Chelsea-Luton, and you know I've gone for a Chelsea 2-1 win. I'm not biased here. I'm not going to do anything silly. The rest of the weekend, I'm starting low scoring and finishing high scoring. Something I seem to be doing for all the leagues this week. I've gone for Bournemouth 1, Spurs 2. I think Spurs look excellent under Postecoglou. It's just whether they're defensively sound enough at times. I think Arsenal will beat Fulham 2-0. Despite the defensive losses at left back, Fulham just looks so depleted without Mitrovic. And against Brentford at the weekend, it was a deflating performance. Brentford Palace, I'm going for 1-1. Both sides could win it on their day, but looks a very even game on paper. I've gone for Everton to pip Wolves 1-0. Both sides pretty abject defensively last weekend and some worrying signs from the Sean Dyche press conference, but it looks like, as I'm recording this, Che Adams is going to be in by the weekend. He started the championship season well, as we know from those predictions, so I think he'll be involved straight away and in a 1-0 win for Everton. I've gone for United to pip Forest 2-1 at home. They don't look convincing yet, but Forest are dismal on the road and have been since they got to the Premier League. Brighton to beat West Ham 3-1 because they look sensational at the minute. Burnley to lose 2-1 at home to Aston Villa, who, yes, lost 5-1 at Newcastle, but were brilliant against Everton and have got so much attacking firepower. Manchester City for a routine 3-0 at Sheffield United. I just think that's going to be a golfing class, as we'll probably see when we face them too. And thriller of the weekend to finish, it always is for Newcastle-Liverpool, isn't it? Newcastle are great going forward at home. Liverpool have got a big attacking threat. But Liverpool, defensively, as we know, can be a little suspect. So Newcastle to edge it by 3-2. Those are my predictions for matchday 3. Do you agree with them or disagree with them? Let me know yours in the comments below. And if you beat me, you will get a shout out in the next episode recap. We've also got championship predictions coming tomorrow for the weekend. I did brilliantly in those last weekend too. Very good weekend for me on the prediction front. League One shorts coming on Thursday and all the pre-season predictions and everything else up in the eye above. A massive thank you for your support as always. If you're going, I hope you enjoy it at Stamford Bridge. And otherwise, I'll see you back here early next week as we look ahead to more Friday night football and a Premier League game for the first time under the lights at Kenilworth Road.